the Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
My next guest is the chief political anchor for the Fox News Channel and the anchor and executive editor of Special Report with Bret Baier. He's previously served as White House correspondent for Fox News Channel and as the network's national security correspondent based at the Pentagon, reporting on military and national security affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, Bret Baier from Fox News, my guest this week on Celebrity Jobber.
How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
I'm good.
You know, I was just reading your biography, and I missed an important one here. #1 New York Times best-selling author. And I think to myself, like, the question, what in the hell did I do wrong in my life starts immediately popping into my brain. You know what? My media friends, they tell me one thing about you, and they say, that Bret Baier, he's a good time.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I know. So tell me a little bit. Tell me a little bit about, I'm from Jersey. I understand you're from Jersey. And I can tell you my dad was like a land developer. He was bidding on a piece of property in Rumson. He was going to subdivide it and put condominiums on it. He got outbid by the boss, Bruce Springsteen. So
Nice.
I can tell you, I know Rumson is a nice place to grow up.
It was great. I was born in Red Bank, grew up in Rumson, and was there from 0 to 10, but really spent most of my kid life in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And then went to college on a golf scholarship at DePaul and bounced around small market TV until I landed at Fox News Channel when Fox started.
Okay.
27 years ago.
So let me back up there for a minute. Did you say a golf scholarship to DePaul?
Yes, sir.
Wow. So what was your handicap in high school?
I was right at scratch, and I was, playing on the team, and it was a lot of fun. Went to the NCAAs. It was great. Man, oh man,
I was on the golf team in high school too. Here's where our similarities end, Bret. But you've been through so much. So you went to high school in Atlanta, Georgia. But what, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of business were your parents, your mom and dad, into?
Yeah, so my dad was a petroleum guy. He worked for Sunoco and then started his own company. My mom was a travel agent, and so we bounced around.
Okay.
But then I went to college and for English and political science, and then got the bug for TV stuff, and I interned at CNN, and I bounced around small market TV. A bunch of different places. Hilton Head, South Carolina, Rockford, Illinois, Burlington, Vermont, Raleigh, North Carolina, and then started with Fox when Fox started.
So it was college when you figured, TV journalism was the angle that you wanted to go in?
I actually interned at WSB in Atlanta in high school, and kind of fell into that. I was the sports editor of the paper in high school, and figured that that might be the way I go. But in college, I was the anchor of the college TV station.
So with all of these little stops, because I've been in the radio biz for a good 30 years too, and I could tell you, I've been bounced around quite a bit. With all of these little stops, what do you think? I mean, I think I know without even asking you, but can you tell me about your big break and if that was just a particular moment, Fox News giving you a call, or if it were, a couple of things that led up to that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of big stories in different places. Rockford, Illinois got me to Raleigh, North Carolina. I covered a big tornado that went national, coverage for CBS at WRAL in Raleigh. And then when I got to Fox, the Atlanta bureau started in my apartment with a fax machine and a cell phone, and I bounced around South and Central America and the Southeast and covered everything.
Wow.
Hurricanes, tornadoes. But I guess 9/11 was the biggest thing.
That was it.
And yeah, it was called up to back up in New York, and then I was called to the Pentagon and never left. I became the Pentagon Guy, and that was the start of my time in Washington.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about being the quote unquote Pentagon Guy? You were Fox News Channel's national security correspondent based at the Pentagon, and you reported on military and national security affairs. Tell me a little, like to a real dum-dum, what that job description is.
Well, I mean, it was basically at the time traveling with the Defense Secretary, who was then Don Rumsfeld, and I traveled around the world. And as he's making the case for war in Afghanistan, covered the military and the intelligence community, traveled to Iraq, I think 12 times, and Afghanistan 13 times, and was embedded with special forces in a number of different places. So doing those stories really gave me an appreciation of the military and the service and sacrifice of not only the people serving, but their families. So it was quite something.
Tell me how nervous a guy has to be. You're here reporting on stuff. You're not trained for any of this kind of stuff, and they are putting you in like, you're at ground zero in some of these places. Did your nerves ever get the best of you in a few of these situations? Yeah.
I mean, there were times where it was hairy. I can remember in Baghdad a couple of times going around with generals, and there were firefights and things happening. Helicopters got fired on, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it was. It's nothing like they face every day.
Right.
But you're in the middle of it, so reporting it.
At any particular point, Bret, when one of those things are happening, you almost like, call your family, call your wife and be like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Do you ever second guess? Is there any like really close call that really got to you that you were like, I don't know. I don't know if this is my thing.
There were close calls. Fortunately, I wasn't married at the time, so didn't have to worry somebody back home. But it was something that I really liked doing, and so it may have been stupid at the time, but I always kind of thought that it was cool to be up in the front lines.
Oh, it sounds cool. Yeah, I mean, it sounds really cool until somebody's dropping a bomb near you. Yeah.
Yeah, until something happens. And listen, we've seen that firsthand. I mean, we had Benjamin Hall, our correspondent, who was out in Ukraine, and get bombed, and we lost a cameraman and a translator. And,
oh my God!
It's a dangerous stuff. And right now, you see Trey Yingst and his crew out there in Israel and facing stuff day to day as that's ongoing. So, being a war correspondent is no joke.
No,
I only did a few trips here and there. Most of my time was back at the home front, either at the Pentagon or the White House. But I have real respect for what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. What was your first job, Bret, like before any of this? Maybe it was in Atlanta, maybe it was in Rumson, but what was your very first paying gig?
My first paying job was cutting lawns for about 12 lawns, and then I became a caddy at a golf course, and those are the big jobs. But as I went along, small market TV, I was a bartender, and I delivered food at the same time. And as I was a reporter in South Carolina, I delivered food and was a reporter. So I got my story done. I put the tape out, and then I delivered food. And I'd go to somebody's door and say, hey, how are you? And they said, aren't you the guy on Channel 6? I'd say, yeah. I'd say, yeah. Did you order the calzone?
Oh, man. Was that embarrassing? Man, that was embarrassing, wasn't it?
It was good. It was just, you get from point A to point B.
I know, but I remember losing one of my radio gigs, and I'm in a bar, the Cock and Bull, pouring beers, and I remember somebody going, Zito, hey, what are you doing here? And I just remember feeling like Fred Flintstone when Mr. Slate's yelling at him, and he shrinks to about 1.5 feet tall. It's like, oh, man, it humbled you real quick, man. I'll tell you that much.
But let me tell you, this book is something I'm really proud of. It's the 5th of these presidential books, and this one looks all the way back to the founding. And I think it puts people in the room, and we could stand to look back at our founding to realize where we've been and where we're going to go.
So, #1 New York Times best-selling author. I think this is incredible. I don't know when you started writing, but yes, I wanted to get to this book, obviously. To Rescue the Constitution, George Washington and the Fragile American Experiment. So you're a real historian. You got to know this stuff frontwards and backwards, or people are going to call you on it. When did you start writing, and when did you develop your passion for writing books?
Yeah, so my first book, this is the 6th book, and the first book was about my son's journeys with open heart surgery, called Special Heart. Anyway, that was the first time I ever sat and wrote something. And then I got into this history with, I started with Dwight Eisenhower, and I fell in love with this process. I found a researcher who was really, really good, and she got these nuggets that it took me 3.5 years for the first book. And I found a co-author who I write with back and forth, and we ping pong and use the researcher's stuff, and found this style of putting the reader in the place, right? So it's sort of like a mini-series is how it reads, but it is our history. So I did Dwight Eisenhower, I did Ronald Reagan, I did FDR, Churchill, and Stalin. And then the last book was Ulysses S. Grant, and I decided this book would go back to the beginning and an overlooked part of the Constitutional Convention where our government was founded. And hopefully people find it, really, if you like history, this is your book 100%. If you don't, this is very readable and something that I think you'll really enjoy.
And it's probably pretty timely, as we are where we are in the world, with the election coming in 2024, to rescue the Constitution. Those words right there kind of just jump out at you. And, I think it's something that a lot of people would be interested in, man.
Yeah, listen, I researching this, it gave me hope. Not because the beginning of our country was really easy or smooth. It was because it was chaotic. It almost fell apart numerous times. And that descent that we face is kind of built in our cake. It's who we are. But we're also about getting to union. So meshing descent and union is really what Washington did. And I think it's really timely as we get ready for what's going to be a very contentious election and a very partisan place. But there's hope. We've been in dark places before. We can get through a lot.
Wow. You're giving me hope right now. Just tell me. Chief political anchor for Fox News Channel, the anchor and executive director of Special Report with Bret Baier, and #1 New York Times bestselling author, the book To Rescue the Constitution, George Washington and the Fragile American Experiment. Available everywhere, Bret?
Everywhere.
Okay.
BretBaier.com has all of it on there, but you can go to Amazon, any place books are sold. It's out there, so check it out.
Bret, next time you're in Tampa, I've got an inn. My brother runs Avila, which is a pretty good golf course here in Tampa. Ring me up. I'm about a 12 or 13 now, but I won't hold you up.
I'm a giving 3. I'm a walking wallet, essentially.
Awesome, man. Great talking to you.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks so much. I thought it was pretty interesting to hear that his big break came during 9/11. Think about that for a minute. I mean, that was one of the most traumatic moments in time that our country and a lot of people have ever been through before. I mean, if you lived up in New York City, if you didn't live in New York City and you're watching it on TV, it just affected you as a human being and as an American. That was what put him center stage. And that's what really got him to where he is today. So Bret came from some kind of money from Rumson, New Jersey. When I told that story about my dad bidding on a piece of property that he was going to put a bunch of office buildings or condominiums on, and Bruce Springsteen outbid him for the same piece of property and just put his house on it, I knew that Rumson was a well-to-do area. Bret's father was in the oil business. Mom was a travel agent. Bret gets a golf scholarship to DePaul University, graduated in 1992 with a BA degree in political science and English. He said that TV journalism, that's really what he wanted to focus on. He got the bug, as he said, and then jumped around from station to station. What I really thought was interesting about Bret, first job, mowing lawns. He had 12 lawns in the neighborhood that he was cutting and, caddying at a golf course. But he had other little gigs while he was still trying to get to where he is. He was a bartender, he said, when he was at one TV station. He was delivering food while he was at another TV station. One time he said he was like delivering a pizza or something to somebody, and they're like, "Hey, aren't you Bret Baier from Channel 6? And now, of course, you know him from the Fox News channel and maybe a second career as a #1 New York Times bestselling author. Bret wrote his first book called Special Heart, A Journey of Faith, Hope, Courage, and Love. That was back in 2014, and it was primarily about his son, Paul. His son was born with cardiac problems and had to have open heart surgery. So he wrote his first book kind of detailing that very difficult time of his life. And by the way, I think Bret's son, Paul, is now 15 years old, and he's gone through like 4 open heart surgeries, and I think he's doing very well, just in case you were wondering. Bret Baier from the Fox News channel and author of the new book, To Rescue the Constitution, George Washington and the Fragile American Experiment. Go to BretBaier.com. That's BretBaier.com. for all the info. Well, thanks again for listening. Please subscribe. And if you like this podcast, we ask you to give us a 5-star rating. Please leave a review. It's a long journey for a lot of these celebrities. I mean, hell, before his big break, Bret Baier's working at a TV station delivering pizzas. It's not always easy. Do you remember your first job? Did it teach you anything? We'll see you next week with another episode of Celebrity Jobber. As always, thanks for listening. I'm Jeff Zito.